Getting a Checkpost or a child is the fastest way to getting a Czech permanent residence permit. It is not the only way though, and let me give you 7 tips on getting the Czech permanent residency faster and quicker than ever before. And especially stick for numbers 3 and 6 because those are the ones where people make the most mistakes. So let's go through the 7 tips on getting the Czech permanent residence permit faster and easier than ever before. Number 1 is get a Checkpost or a child. Well, it might sound a bit funny or that I'm making fun of you or whatever, but it's actually a real reason or a real way to get in the Czech permanent residency faster. Because if you are a close family member of an EU citizen with a permanent residence permit in the Czech Republic, or if you're a close family member of a Czech citizen, you can get the permanent residence permit after 2 years. So not after 5 years or not after 10 years as in such cases, but after 2 years. So it's actually really the fastest way. Of course, I'm not saying that you should fake your relationship or you should fake your marriage or something. All I'm saying is that if you already have a Checkpost or a Czech child, you can use it for your advantage. So that was tip number 1. That can shorten the time you need to get the PR from 10 or 5 years to just 2 years. Tip number 2 for getting the permanent residency faster is to think about getting the PR even before you qualify for it, or basically in the beginning of your move to the Czech Republic. I talked about preparation or having a clear goal or having a clear vision when you're moving here in my previous video, so check the link which will appear somewhere here if you want to know more about that and if you're in the phase that you're just moving here. If not, it's still important because if you're thinking about getting the PR already in the beginning of your journey, even before you moved here or within the first year, second year, just before you qualify, you can adjust the approach in the way that it benefits the PR. Okay, there are some steps, if you think about them and you make them differently, it can shorten the way to the PR. As I mentioned, in some cases, like a good preparation can save you up to 8 years of waiting. Okay, because for example, as a student, if you have the student visa or student residence permit, your student years only count as half. So if you're a student, you might actually need to be here for 10 years to qualify for the PR. On the other hand, if you're a family member, close family member, if you have a spouse or a child from the Czech Republic, then it can be only 2 years. The general timeline is 5 years. So you should keep at least this thing already in mind when you're choosing what will be your purpose of stay. If you know that the most important thing for you is to get the PR as soon as possible, then you will choose a different route than if it's not that important for you. It's just one of the things. Another thing is, for example, the point number 3, which I'll go through right now. So let's do it. Point number 3 of all the ways which can help you shorten the time and get the PR faster and sooner basically than in any other way is to start learning Czech as soon as possible. Because this is actually one of the most common problems we see in our everyday life in Move to Prague. And that usually it goes like this. Hey, I've been living here for 8 years or 10 years and I would like to apply for the PR, or I would like to invite my child. And it's, you know, if you have a PR, everything is easier. If you don't have PR, then you're just adding yourself unnecessary stress of your renewals and not having anything certain. Because when you get the PR, you will never be kicked out of the Czech Republic. You can do whatever you want. You can work freely. You don't have to do anything. If you don't, you always need to keep the purpose of your stay. You need to keep renewing the residence permit every 2 years. So gives you not getting the permanent residency actually adds more stress to your life and more paperwork and more dealings with the Ministry of the Interior. So getting a PR should be one of the main things on your list, because it will make your life way easier than not having the PR. And Czech language is usually the main barrier in getting the PR, because people have been living here for 10 years even, and they don't speak, or they don't think they speak good enough to pass the Czech language exam. But just like all it takes is a bit of dedication. You know, imagine or weigh these options. Like, what is more complicated, or what is worse for you? Like, spend every day 5-10 minutes learning Czech, or spend here 5 extra unnecessary years just extending your visas, extending your residence permits, constantly worrying about the result, if you will get it extended or not, if someone will kick you out or not. You know, so it's definitely, if you dedicate yourself to learning Czech, you can make it. You know, and dedicated, I mean not only speaking to your English speaking friends, but having some Czech speaking friends and actually training with them. Reading, if you just go shopping to a supermarket, just read the labels, repeat it, learn it. And if you just spend 10-15 minutes a day, it can save you a couple years in the long-term goal. So that's usually the most common problem, and you can easily avoid it if you start thinking about it even prior you apply for the permanent residency, or even before you move to the Czech Republic. Point number 4 is, and it's also one of the most common problems, or it can be one of the few reasons to deny your permanent residency application actually, and that's your income. Because for the PR, you need to prove that you have high enough monthly income, and it's kind of easy to mess it up, and it happens. And it especially happens to people who are freelancing, who are working as self-employed in the Czech Republic. And why it happens is, for example, for the self-employed people, is that you prove your income in a specific way. You usually do it through your tax return for the previous year. So if today is this year is the year when you're applying for your PR, so it's 2022, the ministry will be checking your 2021 tax return. And then it depends. If you haven't done your taxes properly, or you're not showing high enough income, then the PR will be denied because you're not meeting the minimum requirement. But if you planned it in advance, then you declared high enough taxes, and then it will be easy for you to get the PR approved because you're meeting the minimum requirement. So this is one thing for freelancers. If you're employed, it's obviously easier as long as you don't complicate your life yourself. You know, because sometimes I don't understand it, but what people sometimes do is that right before they want to apply for the PR, they decided it's a very good idea to change jobs, you know, or stop working at all, or I don't know, switch from employment to freelancing. And that's one of the stupidest things you can do. If you have a stable job, basically all you need to prove for your permanent residence application is your employment contract and the last 3 salary slips. And the ministry should not request anything else as long as your income is high enough. But if you change job, if you leave the job, if you switch from employment to self-employment, all this will complicate the process, because even if you get a new job, you are still in the probation period, so the ministry might wait for you to pass the probation period so they know basically that you will keep getting this salary. So it's just don't complicate it yourself. Make sure that you prepare the tax return well if you are a freelancer, or make sure that you stay in the job and that your salary is high enough to meet the requirements if you are employed. Point number 5 is for you to apply while you still have a valid residence permit. So let's say you have an employee card, it has 2 years validity, somewhere you've already passed your 5 years, and you're somewhere in the middle of the validity. So 1 year gone, 1 year still left. That's the perfect time to apply for the PR, because you still have long enough time to get it approved, and if it's not approved in time, you still have time to extend your current residence permit. Because the thing is, I again explained it in some of my previous videos, but the thing is that applying for the PR does not automatically grant you a bridging visa. So if you let your current residence permit expire and you don't renew it while you are still waiting for the result about your PR, you might get yourself into a situation that you might need to leave the Czech Republic and either wait for the approval of the PR outside of the Czech Republic, or even get it directly denied because you don't have any valid residence permit at the moment, so you break the continuity of your stay and hence you cannot get the PR. So applying while you still have at least a year, let's say, is the best thing you can do. Again, I've seen people applying like right before, like 2 months before their residence permit expires. It's technically possible, but again, you're adding yourself unnecessary stress and potential complications. Number 6 is be careful with your travels. Because many people don't realize this, but there is a limit of how many days you can spend outside of the Czech Republic during the 5 years or whenever you're applying for the PR to still qualify for the permanent residency. So if you travel too much and if you spend too much time outside of the Czech Republic, you either might not qualify at all, or B, you will need to wait for a bit longer to qualify. So maybe like you've been here for 5 years, but you've spent like 1.5 years traveling. So you might need to wait for another half years to like get this time back. So this is one of the most important things to make sure that you don't travel more than what is allowed to still qualify for the PR. Number 7 is to submit your application complete, meaning all the documents in a perfect form, nothing missing. First, there is no rush. If you're applying for a PR and if you're following the previous steps, meaning that you, for example, apply long enough before your current residency expires, so let's say you have a year to get the PR approved, you don't really need to rush anywhere. And it's always better to submit the application like perfect than to rush it. Submit like the application with half documents missing and then start sending the documents to them later. First, it doesn't really look well. You've been here for 5 years or 6 years, 7 years, whatever. You had 7 years to prepare the application and you were not able to do that, and you just like submitted half of the documents and you want to send like the rest later. That's already like a first warning sign for the ministry, let's say. Second thing is that the time when the ministry is waiting for any missing documents does not count to the approval time. So if officially the ministry has 60 days to make the decision and they wait 60 days for your documents, then the approval time extends to 120 days because the time they've been waiting for you doesn't count. That's second thing. Third thing is that anytime you're missing something, you might complicate the process for yourself. Because every like missing document, every complication, every letter you need to send to the ministry is a potential threat to the approval process, because if the ministry is missing some documents, they need to send you a letter. But maybe you've moved meanwhile. That's why you didn't submit the proof of accommodation, because you were waiting for the proof from the new address. But then meanwhile the ministry sends a letter requesting the documents to the old address where you no longer live. So you miss the letter, you get denied. There are many things like that. So if you want to prevent them and get the approval as soon as possible and get the PR as soon as possible, you should always submit the application properly with all the documents and in perfect condition. Of course, if you need any help with that, let me know, let us know. We at Move to Prague will be happy to help you. We've done like plenty of PRs. If you're doing it yourself, that applies the same way. It's better to wait for 3 more weeks and submit the application like complete and in perfect condition than to rush it, submit it today, and then anyway wait like 60 days to get the documents done, having to send it to the ministry and wait for the letters.